Learn all about living in San Miguel de Allende from expat Joseph Toone in this video interview with expats in Mexico. And what was the house like and where was it located? Tell us a little bit about it.
It was in San Miguel de Allende, right on the border of Centro. It had been an orchard. And when I moved in, we were the first family in. There were a couple spec houses. It hasn't grown much. In the last 2 years, there was a big surge, and it probably went from these 4 houses to probably around 20. But in today's world now, everything's back slowing down again.
It sounds like a perfect location.
It's been great because I don't have a car. I can walk everywhere or take a bus or a taxi. It's been very, very convenient.
How big is your house and your lot? Is it pretty good size?
I'm not quite sure what the lot size is because everything's done in meters.
Sure.
Have you ever been to a Mexican closing?
Yes, I had 2 houses in Puerto Vallarta.
They're so dull because they go through the who owned the land forever.
I know.
Always in meters, and I never really understood. It's about 5,000 square feet.
Oh, it's a good size house.
For one person, but when you had 3 teenagers, it was perfect.
Right.
They could run around.
How many bedrooms were there?
3 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, an office, a family room. The nicest thing about it for me is it's got a very long living room. And that's where I hold dance classes. Because you can have 20 partners in a row all practicing for a presentation.
Well, tell us about this, the dance classes. That's interesting.
Well, the first year here, when I was still up in Raleigh, I got certified to be able to teach English because I thought English as a second language will give me something to do when I get here.
Yeah.
I did that for a year, and through it, I had a student that was a grandmother, and she invited me to be her dance-on partner. If you're not familiar, dance-on's a style of dance, just like salsa or square dancing. I was like, oh, Mercedes. I don't speak Spanish at that point. I don't know how to dance. I didn't really see the upside to being her partner. But I did, and we got good at it. And we would go and perform in festivals all around town and eventually all around Mexico.
Impressive.
And then all these festivals were always for saints and virgins I'd never heard of. So I'd come back from each event and do research to try to figure out who it was they were celebrating. Wrote it down so I knew for the next time. And now all these stories spread across 10 books on San Miguel that, depending on the time of year, will go up to #1 for Mexican history and travel on Amazon. So for me, this was great fun. I just really, really enjoyed it. And then the books led to doing tours, and it just became its own life force onto its own.
Well, tell us more about your books.
There's a whole series called San Miguel de Allende Secrets. And at first they were holiday dependent. You know, what are the traditions of Christmas, Easter, Day of the Dead? And then as they went on, they expanded more, what's it like to live here? What's it like to be an expat in Mexico? More along those lines.
And what is the name of your company?
It's just Joseph Toone Tours. I've got a silly name, so it made it easy.
What got you interested in doing tours besides, I mean, obviously you did a lot of research on the books that basically used the research you did in the books to get you started in the tour business.
Because the dance classes where I would volunteer to teach dance was usually in the evenings, usually from about 4 o'clock on.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was looking for something to do in the mornings, and I just liked explaining this stuff. You know, once I wrote it down, it was like, well, now it's in my head. I can actually explain it to people. And so it's just been great fun. Because every year, what people are interested changes, and it changes your focus. When I first started doing Day of the Dead tours, I got 2 people. The next year, I got 4. The next year, I had a best-selling book. I had a big event at the Katrina Museum, the Skeleton Museum. I got 8. So I was like, well, at least it's doubling. But when Coco came out, it skyrocketed. Now I was getting 60 or 70 people a day for the week leading up to Day of the Dead.
How much do you charge for a day tour?
Well, the most popular is the 2-hour walking tour. And they're 500 pesos or 25 US dollars. And it's usually in the mornings, and people do it when they start their trip. And then if they like me, next thing you know, they'll book me every day for the week.
How large is the expat community there? It's always been quite large.
the most common reference you see was from back in the 80s when it was about 10% of the population. When they do the census here, they don't separate out the foreigners from the Mexicans.
Sure.
It's no real good number to be able to say. I don't think it's anywhere near 10%, maybe half that. Because a lot of foreigners come down, they go into their home, and they maybe only come out once a week for the quilting club, the certain charity they belong to, the bridge club, whatever it is they like to do.
Do you have more snowbirds that have second homes and SMA versus expats who live there full time?
Oh, most definitely. Particularly amongst the Canadians. They're very big on coming down October through March or right after Christmas and going back right before Easter.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them have second or third homes, but are only here for that little window.
SMA still has a reputation of being quite expensive.
And
Well,
it is.
Compared with most other colonial cities in Mexico, and even with the international resorts along the coast.
I can see that. And it's funny because if you come down for just economic reasons, you're going to be very frustrated. Because it's if I said to you, you want to retire cheaply, go to New York State. And you move to Manhattan. And what I really meant was Poughkeepsie or Albany. Manhattan's one of the most expensive cities in the world. San Miguel is one of the most expensive cities in Mexico. So if you come down for only economic reasons, you're going to be very frustrated very quickly. Because if you want to live on your pension or have your pension go farther, there's 99% of the rest of Mexico to move to. You're not going to have the culture, the restaurants, the opportunities that you do here. But, that's always the trade-off.
Let's talk a little bit about cost of living. How much did you pay for your house? Sounds like it's a beautiful 5,000 square foot house.
It was $650. But in general, Centro is the most expensive. To get a small house, which would be hard to find, it's probably going to run you at least $300,000 or $400,000. Now, the farther out you go, the less expensive things become.
Like most cities.
For less and so on and so forth. Probably your average 2-bedroom condo is going to run you anywhere from $200 to $400.
Mm-hmm. What about rents? What do rents usually run for, let's say, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house?
I only know one person that rents, and she pays $1,200 for an unfurnished 2-bedroom, 2-bath.
Is it an apartment or a house?
It's like what do you call those houses in Florida where they're all attached?
Townhouses.
So it's not technically a condo because it's its own home, but they share walls.
I understand. That's the way a lot of Mexico is.
Yes.
Right. Land is at a premium, particularly in areas like where I live in Puerto Vallarta. That type of home is very, very common. So what do you think it would... give me an idea in terms of low, medium, and high, in terms of annual income you'd have to have, or no, rather monthly income you'd have to live in San Miguel.
If you were going to rent, let's say, a 1-bedroom apartment, not in Centro, and maybe that runs you $600 to $800 a month, and then probably double that to include your food, your entertainment. Normally when bonds were doing good, I was making about $2,000 a month, and that was more than enough. I usually could save money, but I also had the house paid for. That makes sense.
Right.
But a lot of retired school teachers, postal workers, I can't imagine they're making more than $2,000 a month. If you're paying about $600 to $800 for rent, food's not that expensive.
Right.
You don't have the insurances, the medical insurance, the type of stuff that eats so much of your U.S. income. And you live on street food and rice and beans, you can get by food very cheaply. If you want to eat out in a restaurant every night, it's going to cost a lot more. 3
things that you love most about San Miguel de Allende.
Number 1 is the opportunities. There are opportunities here that I couldn't have in the U.S. I couldn't spend my day immersed in history and culture and traditions and talk about them, write about them in the U.S. There just wouldn't be any market for it. The dancing, when things are normal, there's a party, there's a presentation, there's a class every day. You know, if you're dancing your life away, you're in a pretty good mood. It's really hard to stay negative if you're having fun doing some activity.
That's why you moved to Mexico.
Most people would say the weather, but I come from a long line of intermarrying Gaelic vampires. It's nothing for me. But most people would probably say the weather. But really for me, it'd be more the opportunities. The opportunities, by and large. There's just things I can do all day long I couldn't do in the States.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I couldn't go to an old folks home and teach dancing just because of the liability issues, the insurance costs. It would be through the roof. And people don't think that way here. They just come, they have a good time. That's how you meet people and you expand your social network.
Do you have a lot of Mexican friends?
More so than foreigners.
And how skilled are you in the language?
I'm intermediate.
Anything you'd like to add? Any bit of wisdom you'd like to pass along to our viewers?
If you're coming down, like we mentioned earlier, just for financial reasons, you're going to get very frustrated, particularly if you choose a beach community, San Miguel, something that relies on tourism, because like we mentioned, it'll be expensive. Also, you're going to get very frustrated because a lot of people just want to pretend they're still in Houston or wherever. They don't want to know what the locals are doing. They're not interested in finding out what's going on. And some even make a very strong attempt to not know. They're the same people that'll be very frustrated when their cleaning lady, Guadalupe, doesn't show up on December 12th because they have no idea that's the feast day of Guadalupe. And it's a big day for parties, particularly if your name is Guadalupe. And so you're going to be constantly frustrated. And even if there's a big box grocery store in your town, and if you think it's going to be like the Piggly Wiggly or the Harris Teeter, wherever you shop at home, it's not. You know, it is a different culture. The way we drive, the way we speak, the way we think here is completely different. And if you're trying to convince yourself you're still in the States, because I listen to NPR all day and I watch Netflix all day, you're just going to be frustrated. And those people don't last long. You know, if it's just for money and you're just trying to pretend you're still in the States, you're going to be very frustrated. If you come a little more open-minded and want to learn new stuff and experience new things and live in a different culture, you're going to have a blast.
Well, listen, I appreciate your taking the time to talk to us today, Joseph. It sounds like you've got a wonderful life in San Miguel de Allende.
It's great. I've been very, very fortunate. I'd highly recommend it.